this week is going to be a really, really short podcast, but a podcast focused on something that's really, really important, especially if you sell services into businesses, so into a business-to-business environment and work in that sector. So this podcast is for you, and I'm going to talk to you about a phrase called how to sell high and wide into companies, into people that you work with. And the reason this is important is because one of the biggest known facts that we have in business is that it's so much easier to do business with existing customers than it is to try and find new business. And I'm going to share with you, and I'm actually going to share it in a separate podcast how I actually did it, but I'm going to share with you a story about how I was able to build a relationship within an organization that I was able then to sell higher and wider within that organization, that resulted in me closing some business recently that was a significant fee, certainly large 5-figure fee. And that was all done through my ability to sell high and wide. And I'm going to share that in a separate podcast, but I wanted to talk a little bit about what it means to sell high and wide and how you can do it. So what does it mean to sell high and wide? Well, the obvious words are high is high, to go up and to go down, and wide is to go along different ways. And the concept, I don't know where it was coined before, but it's one I've always used. When you're selling into businesses, one of the mistakes that many people will make is they'll try and find one individual in that company. So what will happen is they'll find, let's say they've engaged with an IT director or a marketing director, a HR director, I don't know, or even a manager, whoever that person is. And they've gone into that person, they've tried to build a relationship, and they've built a relationship, and it's great. But one of the weaknesses around just selling and building your relationship with one person is that if that person then chooses to leave that business, or unfortunately is moved out of that business, and you haven't got relationships with other people, you're in a really, really difficult position. And the other challenge that comes from that is if you are engaging with what I would call an influencer or an implementer, so someone that's at the third or second layers of an organization, that person isn't actually going to sign off the check or sign off the PO to do business with you. If you're doing business with those people, then you may find that actually when you get your proposal pushed up to the next level, so when someone moves it up to get someone to say, hey, we've had this proposal from X, Y, and Z company, should we do it? The decision maker then sort of says, no, we haven't got it in the budget, or it's not a priority, or I don't want to spend that, or whatever. So the beauty about selling high is the higher you go in any organization, the better it can be. And most people will think in an organization that will be, for example, the CEO or the chairperson, but actually it can be even higher than that. So I have a client at the moment and I have a person who I introduced into that client who has done a brilliant job of getting to work with not only the CEO in that business and the leaders of that team, but he was also able to build a really strong relationship with the owner of the business who has other companies. So now, because of that relationship, he's built a really strong engagement with the owner. He's ultimately as high as he can get in that organization with his influence and what he does. And so the ability to be able to sell high into the senior levels of decision making, the chiefs, the C-suite as let's talk about it, the chief marketing officer, chief technical officer, chief information officer, chief revenue officer, chief people officer, whatever those elements are, and then the stakeholders, the shareholders above that, is a really strong thing to do. And I always try and do this. I always try and build those relationships by being able to get to talk to those type of people. But what I also want to do, and going back to my point of I want to get to the chiefs of that operation, I also want to go wider. So if I just work in one department, for example, and I've worked with an organization where I'm with they're built into 6 different divisions, and if I've engaged with one of those divisions, that's great. But again, I want to be able to sell high and wide. I want to do more work. And many large organizations have different divisions. They have different company structures, different ways of operating. So what I've been able to do by engaging, I'm in the process of actually doing this right now, is because I've been able to engage with one division, what I'm then starting to then do is be introduced by the leader of that division to other senior people, other senior partners that are within that part of the business that run different divisions. So I'm trying to move to the right and to the left so that I've absolutely got a chance to then have conversations with those people. And what I'll do is I'll often do the work I'm doing with that part of the team, but then I'll arrange maybe a chance to meet with that person, or they might have heard some good things about what I'm doing, and I'm then able to have a conversation with those people. So one of the key things that you need to be able to do is to think about trying to sell high but also why. Get into different people so that you can really start to use your expertise and knowledge and the references that you've maybe built up. So, because hopefully if you're doing a good job with that team and that department, they're going to want to share that story. They're going to want to say, hey, we're having great success working with James in this area. And it's going to make the other people, the other senior people that are at different areas, have different responsibilities, go, okay, I'm intrigued by that. Who's James? And let me introduce him to them. And maybe the next time you're in the office with them or you're meeting them, they'll introduce you to that person and you can share a business card and exchange contact details. So that referral, that link across is going to be so powerful for you. So if you can be in a position to start to what I would call sell high and wide, then it's going to give you a much better chance of growing your business with that customer and doing more business, which is more cost effective for you. And by the way, it's easier because you're generally on their payment system and you generally have worked with their HR teams or the people involved if you're doing training or systems. You're with their IT teams. You've worked with that team. So it's much easier to do it with one person and then you're in, rather than just do one, get into that company and do a little bit of work and then try and find a different company. Do what I do. Try and get into that organization, then try and sell across other areas. But if you are going to go higher, if you are going to go to those chiefs and those senior people, there's one major factor you've got to take into account. Don't treat them in the same way as you treated maybe the person that maybe brought you into the organization. If you are going to go up through the levels, start thinking about and be putting yourself in the shoes of that person, because the C-suite or the shareholders or the owner is going to have a different set of goals and parameters and things that concern them and that are focused on than maybe the person you've engaged with. And if you start going in there talking about the detail to a C-suite person, the chances are they're going to think you're irrelevant and want to not talk to you. If you can start talking about key strategic issues and things that they're going to be focused on that are critical for them, or maybe you've seen them in a report, share that information, and you can then start going adding value about how you can help them solve that, it's going to open up the door. So look, this is a really, really simple way to do more business with customers that you're doing, especially if you're dealing with businesses that are larger organizations that you want to start building relationships with. So we want to do this idea of selling high and wide. But two little words of warning before we finish, 2 points of warning, I should say. The first thing is this: just be a bit careful that when you're going into those other areas, you don't forget the other people that you've worked with. I've seen a lot of cases, people, and I've actually sometimes made this mistake where I've gone and had a conversation over here after I'm speaking to this person. By the way, if you're listening online, I've got my fingers in 2 different areas. But the point being is I've gone and had a conversation with this person. And when I've then mentioned that I've had that conversation, the other person's still a little bit like, oh, right, you don't love me anymore. You're focused on this other person. So you have to do it really carefully. Sometimes I always like to say, look, I'm having a chat with your colleague, so-and-so. I just wanted to check that's okay with you. And if it's not, find out what's stopping them from doing that. But just get their support with it, because hopefully they'll be like, yeah, great, go and have a chat with so-and-so, because they're a great person. I know them really well, and they're a great person to have a conversation with. And that's a great way to then make that connection happen. But what you will find, and the second word of warning around that, is sometimes in larger organizations, and I've seen this again with working with companies, unfortunately, people don't get on. So even though you want to try and sell or engage with the person over in this other area, they may have a completely disagreement or politics and culture in these organizations sometimes happens in a different way. And unfortunately, they may not actually agree or like or get on with some of those people, which unfortunately can cause some tension. And it might even mean that because you've gone over and said, I'm going to go and work with this person and have a conversation with them, that might even frustrate the person you're working with and cause you to lose or affect the business that you're having with them. So we never want to be in a position where we do that. So just doesn't mean you have to share those things, but just have them in mind. Maybe ask the question, tell me a bit more about that person. How do you guys know each other? And then they might say, oh yeah, I know so-and-so, they're a great person and I love them and they're great. Oh, fantastic, great. Well, yeah, maybe we could have introduction at a time where we could go out for a bit of lunch together or go out for a coffee together and have a chat and let that person make that introduction happen. They are your biggest supporter with that other person, and that can help you then drive other activities as a result of that. But just be careful when you are using those references that you're talking about people that, that they're going to get on with. Bigger organizations, the more people there are, and it's natural it happens, the more people there are, the more chances there are that some people just aren't going to get on. They're different types of people and they're going to have those disagreements. And if you're not careful, that could affect you when you're trying to sell high and wide. It can actually stop you from making the progress you want. So there you have my thoughts around selling high and wide. I hope it's helpful. I hope it's giving you some insights. If you're in business to business sales, think about this, look at this. It's so much easier especially if, you'll find that these different types of people in different areas and different roles and responsibilities in different departments generally have different budgets. So not only can you engage with a certain person on a budget here, you might be able to get some projects engaged on a budget over here. So it's a great way to do more business with the same customer, less hassle, increase your chance of success. You've already got people that you're delivering work for. It's a great internal reference. And when your current customer said, "Oh, definitely use James, he's brilliant, you should, definitely use him," it just really makes the other person feel there's less risk involved, so it makes them more comfortable to do it. It's a really simple way, but effective way to grow your business without necessarily having to try and find new customers. Try it and let me know how you get on. So as I always do, inspirational stories, most important thing I can do is to share some inspirational stories, whether they're young and old, of people that have achieved incredible things. And I just wanted to give you a story of a young man called Jack Rigby. Jack Rigby, unfortunately, his father a number of years ago was killed. So sad that his dad, Lee, was killed outside by some terrorists outside his barracks in London. And Jack is a young man now, he's 13, and he set out to, in May of this year, in 2023, he set out to basically try and raise some money for his dad's bereavement charity. So his dad has a charity which raises money for people that have had family members who've lost their loved ones through the military. And he set out to walk during the course of May 26.2 miles. He was going to walk a marathon. He's only a young lad, 13 years old, so he's going to walk this. And he basically started to do these fundraising events, and then people started to pick up on it, and his goals of what he was going to achieve grew and grew and grew. And he was awarded an award. He was given an award recently nationally, and he's now raised over £54,000 to the time when we recorded the podcast for people that to help those that have had family members supported. So again, Jack Rigby, inspirational character, love what he's doing, love what he's done there. A young man, 13 years old, but he's a believer that actually he can achieve anything. He makes stuff happen. I guess my question to you is, what inspiration can you take from a 13-year-old to make stuff happen in your life? Let me know. I'd love to know how it's going to help you drive where you want to get to. That's it from me this week. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, I'll see you next week. Take care.